Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's edition of Imperial as One's Belonging series, where we explore the lived experiences of individuals from the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities, stories which help us to understand and to gain a better insight of what it means to belong. And I say this every week, but I've been trying to get this young lady I've been trying to get this interview for a long time. And, I am just so happy that Gabrielle Kerr Gordon has agreed to be our guest on Belonging with us today. Gabrielle, you know that I think the world of you, right? And it's just so good that you've got the time to share your story with us. So I'm going to start off and I'm going to kick off by asking my usual question is that, can you tell me a little bit about what it is as you were growing up that gave you your sense of identity, sense of belonging when you were growing up?
Absolutely. And first of all, happy to be here. And then it's taken a while. Um, for me growing up, what gave me my sense of belonging is my family. And really that having that sense of community, they have been my guiding light. They have been my influence. They have shaped quite heavily the path and the directions that I've gone on. Um, throughout they've helped me connect to my culture in different ways. They've really just gave me my sense of purpose. So family is where I get my sense of belonging from. And it sounds very cliche, but that's where it all
Can
starts for me. It starts and ends for me with my family.
Right. So can you give us a little bit more of a glimpse about, you say it's your family, they've been like the bedrock, they are what has helped you to, can you give us some illustrations of something which you as a family do, you as a family enjoy, which help to ground you to say, yeah, this is what we do as a family?
Oh, absolutely. So for me and my family, a lot of it is centered around music. And
Mhm.
so we have a Jamaican background, so very much Jamaican culture. And music has been a center point for that. My dad and my uncles were very heavily involved in sound system culture, which was very predominant, especially in the 1980s. It was a way of combating racism in the UK. It very much drew on connections from Jamaica and bringing it over and bringing that sound and that feeling over to the UK, especially doing the Windrush elements. And that very much played a huge part in how I've grown up. So big speakers, bass lines, dub plates running, all of that all really um had a huge influence on how I grew up, and then that influenced me to go and join Carnival and really get involved because Notting Hill Carnival brings together all Caribbean cultures, and sound system culture is very much a big part of Notting Hill Carnival. We have them on the side roads. So yeah, it's music. Music is how my family connect and come together, and yeah.
That's one. So they brought the culture into the house. So although you were home from, in terms of, and you mentioned about the Windrush that your parents were part of the Windrush generation, as it were. Although they were here in this country, they brought the sunny island of Jamaica right here to
uh,
in the form of the music and the culture that you enjoyed and you continue to enjoy. So what was it like then when you were going to school and things like that, um, with the different cultures which you would have been experiencing at that time?
so going to school was okay. So school was very much so secondary school was very influenced, was a very mixed school. It was a lot of black culture, it was a lot of Indian culture, Southeast Asian culture. So it was a nice melting pot, and I got exposed to lots of different people, and yeah, it was a nice experience. It made me really open to different experiences,
Okay.
um, especially in secondary school.
Okay.
Primary school not so much, but secondary school absolutely.
So it was again, so it was like a melting pot. So
Ab-
you were exposed to a lot of things. You had your own culture, which you were very proud of, going to
Absolutely,
your sound systems and the carnival, but you could also embrace other people's cultures in the school
absolutely.
environment. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things I remember, and one of the memories that stays with me is my secondary school used to do international evenings, and I think that's where I was actually thinking about it now, and it has taken me a while to to bring back all these memories
Yeah.
actually. When I was first exposed to the idea of equality, diversity, and inclusion, at that young age, because international, I remember international evenings, we had students coming in doing henna tattoos, you had teachers Morris dancing, you had people bringing in different foods, and everybody just being able to mingle and socialize and get to experience each other's different, yeah, to really get involved into everybody's different cultures. And something I actually value now. I remember it's something I actually truly value, and so it's stayed with me.
You know what? I really like that because there you were talking about people coming together with their different cultures, right? And everybody celebrating that culture. And they weren't looking, you could see that they were different, but you were still celebrating that that's your culture, if that
Oh,
makes sense.
oh, absolutely. And considering my secondary school was a Catholic school, so it was a Catholic secondary school, we still had a very wide range of different religions that we were able to talk about and explore in a respectful way. So although it was very heavily Catholic school, so we used to go to church, we used to go to mass at the beginning of term. I was a spiritual leader for the school, and so it was very, although it was very heavily in the Catholic realm, there was such an openness to other religions as well. And I think that's one thing I would take away from my secondary school experience, is that being open and being welcoming, and it was easy. It never felt like a struggle. It never felt like a challenge to be inclusive. It was natural.
That's really good because I know when I've spoken to others, it's almost like the culture is kind of like being pushed to a side, and it's almost we're not celebrating that. But to hear that your school actually embraced and welcomed that, that's really. So how did that um impact you in terms of your sense of belonging within the school environment, within society as such?
I never felt out of place there. So I felt that I was able to do whatever I wanted to do, whatever I could put my mind to.
Mhm.
Now, don't get me wrong, there was definitely some elements where we're not so much pushed to go to university. Um, and that part, there was some elements of that, but generally I felt that I can do the computing classes. I can, when I was thinking back to my GCSEs, doing business in IT back then as well.
Mhm.
Because again, IT very much was heavily influenced from my parents. So it's always very much in that sphere. And but I felt able to do that and able to connect in that way. I was able to try different things, try new things, and really get stuck in without judgment, without fear. The teachers really tried to encourage that level of growth, and really were, you could go to them in a pastoral sense.
Yeah.
So if anybody ever felt like they were losing their way, or felt that they're struggling in any form, that you always had it was a sense of safety. It created a sense of safety, I think. And by having that sense of safety, I felt like I belonged there. And it's really tested what's testament to that is a lot of people in my year group are still very close knit, very together. Life hasn't separated
Yeah.
them, and some in more ways than one, some are in actual long-term relationships. It's definitely created a small community for us.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. That's really good to hear that the school was able to engender that sense of belonging for for you as a pupil, because I know for many people that's not not the sense that they actually get from the school.
Yeah.
So that's really good to hear. What I was gonna ask then, so when you left school, then what you mentioned about you liked IT and business. What were your plans? Where were you going? The world's your oyster. What were you gonna do?
So, like I said, my school was quite a close knit community, so a lot of people stayed on in their sixth form to continue in sixth form.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of the very few that decided to diverge from that path and
Mm-hmm.
decided that actually I want to go somewhere new. I want to try and meet some new people, and computing is where I want to be. My family's quite tech savvy, quite very into their tech. Mum's very much into projects, etc. So I was like, okay, I want to do a BTEC and national diploma for IT practitioners. Really get heavily involved in coding and networking, in the compute networking in the computer sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to go to Barking College, where that was one of the subjects, and but that's where I would say that I've started to feel a bit out of place.
Right.
So, and that's very much because I was one of the only black girls in my class group. I was one of the only females in the class group.
Right.
So to I felt it difficult to connect to some of the other students there, and it became quite a lonely
Right.
experience during college. But it set me on my path to my career. So um I decided that in my second year, a lot of it was our coursework was submitted online at that point. So I decided to go to my full tutor and say, I would like to experience work, but I want to complete my course. Is there a way that I can do both?
Mm-hmm.
And we came to an agreement that I will continue to submit my coursework online, and as long as that's all submitted, I'll be able to complete my second year of college. And I then decided to take up a business administration apprenticeship for an experiential marketing company in Holborn. So very different pathway, really, but
Right.
it was my step into experiencing the world of work.
Yeah. I'm going to just stress back slightly before we go on
Yeah,
to that
please.
kind of like that apprenticeship thing. Just in terms of when you said that when you switched college, when you switched to the college that you went to, that you had that sense of almost like loneliness, isolation, being one of the only black students in your class, and then also being one of the only females in your, or the only female, I think it was, in your class. Yeah. So I just want, in terms of the school, was it, in terms of the college, was it a college where it was attached to a school so that other students knew each other, or was it a proper kind of college where everybody was coming in from from different feeder schools, as it were?
So it was a proper college, so people were coming from all over.
Mm-hmm.
So there was, I can say there was about three black people in total in my class.
Mm-hmm.
Well, two and one mixed race
Mm-hmm.
person in my class back then. Me being one of the only black females in
Yeah.
there. Um, and it was in a place. It was something that where they could connect on a very cis male level.
Yeah.
It was isolating. It
Yeah.
was very isolating. I was away from friendship groups that continued to solidify even more because a lot of them stayed on at their sixth form.
Yeah.
So that sense of community that I was in, I pulled myself out of, and
Yeah.
I felt there was no way back in to
Yeah.
there. That being said, I still have those friendship groups out
Yeah.
till now, out to today, which is great. But so in college years, it was tough.
It was tough. So do you think that that kind of like sense of isolation also um helped, or kind of like forged your idea to say, well, actually, I want to get on and do some work? Um
Yes.
so it was kind of like, although that isolating experience, you said, I want to make the most of it and maximize my time, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Oh, it's definitely a motivational point for me. It was like, well, what can I go in and do? I
Mm-hmm.
can start looking about my career. I can start looking at my next steps. Again, university wasn't something that was actively encouraged in the university, in the college
Mm-hmm.
space. Um, so again, I was like, I wasn't quite sure if the university was really going to be for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I decided, well, let me see what else is out there that I can start to do both.
Yeah.
Really. So,
But
and apprenticeship was where I went.
yeah. So tell me about the apprenticeship. What was it? And clearly, if you're doing the apprenticeship, that's a lot of work doing your college work
It
and
was
the
definitely
apprenticeship at the same time. That's a lot of work
it
to
was
be.
definitely it's definitely a juggling act, and something that I continue to do to this day. I seem to like to juggle things. It's just what I do. Um, it was definitely interesting. So I hadn't been into the world of work before. I've gone into and spent into this marketing company that was using big brands such as Rubicon and Nestle and Wolf Blast wines, and it was very much and at a time where there was also a bit of tragedy. So again, I was 18 in this new environment
Mhm.
with all these I would say adults then, although I was technically an adult, it didn't feel
Yeah.
so much like an adult. Um, and it was overwhelming,
Mhm.
but I did it.
Mhm.
And I'm so proud of myself for doing it and being able to complete both the college and the apprenticeship level 2 at that time.
Mhm.
And I was then going on to the level 3 apprenticeship, and then there was the financial crisis, which meant that company closed down, and I had to think about, well, what am I going to do next?
Mhm.
What do I do? And I ended up in stepping out of my comfort zone and said, well, I need to get by. I'm going to go and work in a pub. And I'm a very introverted person. So that's something that was way out of my comfort zone, something that I never saw myself doing. But I'm forever grateful that I took that step, because that's the step that led me on my way to Imperial.
So, so explain that. So your apprenticeship kind of like got curtailed because of the financial crisis. So
Yes.
lost the was it that the company went out into administration or something like that?
Yeah, so the company had to close down.
Yeah.
So with an apprenticeship, you have to have a company behind you
Hmm.
to complete it. It's not just the studying, it's the on-the-job experience that makes up the apprenticeship. So I couldn't continue the level 3. Um, so I had to stop that and say, well, what do I do now?
Hmm.
There's nothing left for me. I got a phone call to say, well, there's nothing for you to come back to, so don't bother coming in
Yeah.
because the company is gone. I was like, oh, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah. So at that point, what were your family saying? Were your friends saying? What was where were the influences coming from when you were trying to make this? Because it's a big decision. You had already stepped out of your comfort zone once. What was the voices that you were hearing?
Well, again, it goes back down to my family, my mom pushing me to one, make sure that I am stable and that I have something to fall back on. Um, but also because again, like as I mentioned, it came at a time of tragedy for me, which had an impact on my own mental health and well-being.
Mhm.
So it was a lot going on in that time period. And it was the strength of my family that allowed me to think, well, find a purpose.
Mhm. So, do you mind if
And
I ask what that tragedy was?
yeah, no, absolutely. So but one of my very close friends from my secondary school had unfortunately been killed by her partner at the time. And it was a big news. Well, I say it was a big news story. It was a news story that used to feature on the front pages of the Metro.
Yeah.
So it was and it was an ongoing situation as court cases, etc.
Mhm.
Happened at that time. And yeah, so it was a lot to take in and deal
Yeah.
with in one
Yeah.
go. And I didn't know much about mental health and well-being at the time. I didn't
Yeah.
know how to process some of those thoughts and those feelings. And it's my family that helped me deal with everything that was coming my way at that point.
Yeah.
And that's why I say they're forever my foundation. They are my sense belonging, because without them, I wouldn't have been able to get onto the career ladders that I have been able to do. So the crisis has happened. I'm trying to find a purpose, and I need it. For me, working and having something tangible there is how I cope and deal with life stresses, because it's something tangible, something I can help, something I can do, actually do. And got into the pub game, and like I said, for a very introverted person, that was a very interesting experience for me, because I'm having to talk to people on a daily basis. I was a full-time member of staff. I eventually became the assistant manager there, getting my personal license so I could manage the bar when the landlord and landlady were not around or not available. And birthday parties, weddings, funerals, celebrate all types of celebrations, Jack Daniels nights, so very different, all these different events. It took a lot of organization skills, it took a lot of management, but it took a lot of people skills, and that's where I really learned how to start to communicate with people from all different backgrounds coming into this pub. And it was a very homely pub. It was very much, you had your regulars that would come in on a daily basis that you get to know their life, you get to know their families, you get to really, and again, that's what, again, it all comes back down to that word for me, family.
Yeah.
Because you do become a part of it. It was like its own family.
Yeah.
And again, even up to this day, I was speaking to my regulars, even though I had left the pub game 10 years on, was still interacting. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So the thing, it's kind of like when you talk about kind of like being introvert, but I think the furthest thing from being introverted is working in a pub. All right. So what's going on? All right.
Sorry, Wayne, I think I lost you for a moment.
Yeah, we lost connection for some reason. No, I said you spoke about you being introverted, and for me, I think the furthest thing from being an introvert is working in a pub, right? Because you're meeting people in so many states, both sober and in a more inebriated state, and you have to be able to know how to respond, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But also, you also mentioned about the fact that hearing about the people's life stories and their situations and things like that. My question then, because you also said that it's how you managed to end up here at Imperial. So where's that connection come from? And how did you make that transition? What happened?
So so 2 years into pub life, and for being full-time is very demanding work. So I was at the pub almost near enough 7 days a week, almost. Very little time off, and it's very physically demanding work as well. So I decided I wanted to finish, and I also wanted to finish my level 3 apprenticeship. I didn't like having that feeling of that being incomplete.
Yeah.
I am an achievement junkie, as my family would call me. I need to, I like having my qualifications. I like knowing that I've completed something.
Yeah.
So having that hanging around as something that I was never able to finish didn't sit right
It
with
didn't sit right with you. That's
me.
fine. Yeah.
So 2 years in, I decided I want to go and finish my level 3, finish what I started. And I was looking around for different apprenticeships and different routes and thinking about, well, actually, I want to be able to help people. And how do I help people? Human resources are there to help people. They're meant to be people there that are there to support their communities, that are there to really get involved. So I was like, okay, I can get into it. Let me find a HR route in. And that's when I came across the apprenticeship for the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion department here at Imperial. And it was really my people skills that I had developed at the pub, as well as some of the organization skills, and so especially around the event space, because I learned a lot of event management skill set. And that's what enabled me to be able to get my foot into the door here at Imperial. And they've had a hold on me ever since, and I haven't left.
So, and you were able to complete your level 3?
I was able to complete my level 3, and then they decided that I was doing such a good enough job that they decided to keep me on, because apprenticeship is a temporary contract, generally for 18 months at the time. And they decided, well, she's doing all right. She can stay on, which is interesting to me, because when I first, so just before I started at Imperial, I'd come in because there was an event being run by the centre, So it's a nice way to just get a feel for what the centre does before I officially start on the Monday. And I remember coming in on the Friday and I was hearing Dr. Ozzy Stewart speak. I was hearing these people talking about, and I told you to say about cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and I was like, what is that? I have no idea what people are talking about effectively. It's like, I don't, they're speaking a whole nother language to me at this point. And I remember going home that evening and frantically Googling, what is CBT? What is cognitive behavioral therapy? What is, and really trying to get to learn the lingo of higher education university, bearing in mind, I never went to university. So it was very much a brand new environment for me, even though I'm coming into university from the other direction. So yeah, it was interesting time.
I saw one of your fans in the audience saying, "You're not just doing a good job; you're doing an amazing job." Right, and I have to concur with that. You're doing an amazing job, right? And so, in terms of then, not just in terms of the role that you undertake in at Imperial, and you're in the Equalities, Diversity, and Inclusion Center. So what's that look like to you? How is it that you would want to see Imperial in that role?
Good question.
And how has it been for you in that role, as it were?
So it's definitely a role that I've grown into, and that Imperial has given me the space to grow. And that's because I work with some really amazing people, and I've listened a lot from a lot of amazing people that I managed to get exposure to, as well as do additional training to build up my skills within the EDI sphere. Because, like I said, I came in initially not knowing what I'm doing, to then being pushed further into out of my comfort zone. Again, being the introvert that I am, I was given an opportunity to help develop the impact program. And when we
what's the
decided
impact program for
Imperial,
those who may not know? Sorry.
No, that's okay. So used to acronyms now because that's how imperialized I am. The Impact Program stands for Imperial Positive About Cultural Talent, which is our talent development program for minority ethnic staff members. And for me, again, I was pushed out of my comfort zone. So it's a program we decided to bring in-house after an initial trial. And I got an opportunity to work on it with the then head of EDI. And she said, well, why don't you deliver? Why don't you deliver some of the training courses? And I was like, me deliver? I'm happily working in the background. I will happily get things together, pull things together for people, but putting myself out there, not so much. And being on center stage. But yeah, so she said, no, give it a go. Here, there's some training courses. And I remember doing training the trainer sessions with the amazing Sonia Arnold, who really drew some of the actual facilitation skills out of me that I didn't know that I had, or didn't even think I would be able to possess. But it's through that program that I found my sense of belonging at Imperial, because I was able to hear again people's stories and able to connect with people in a way that I wasn't expecting in a job role. Because you come to the job, you think, okay, you're here to do a 9 to 5, or whatever time frame that you decide to work in. And yes, you connect with your team members, but you don't really get to connect with the wider Imperial community because there's so many of us, right? And that program really gave me an opportunity to listen and to hear and to even engage with what people are going through, because I've had some of those experiences, be it if we're looking at it from a mental health element, if we're looking at it from a racism element, because I moved to Dagenham when it was still very much a predominantly BNP area. I've had people say, go back to where you've come from. I was born in the UK, thank you very much. Looks wise, oh, you're not black, you can't be fully black, you've got long hair, you're not a fully black person, where are you really from? So I've had loads of those different types of experiences throughout my life, and being able to connect with people in that sense, and hearing what's some what are some of the blockers for them in terms of being able to feel like they can wholly bring themselves to the workplace, because it's difficult. We put on our faces, we put on these masks, we try to fit in, we try to fit a certain mold, we try to just quietly get on with our day-to-day jobs, and we leave parts of ourselves behind. And for some of us, that's for a sense of safety, for a sense of security, draining. It can really be, yeah. So, and if you're thinking about all the energy that that takes, you're not being able to put that into doing the best or bringing your all into the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
So really trying to help people speak through and just see what their journeys are, because
Mm.
I can't tell you what your journey is going to be, but hopefully I can provide some advice or a listening ear that can help you, guide you through the journey and the path that you are on. And that's how I see the impact program. And I was able to do that here at Imperial, and that helped me belong here at
Yeah.
Imperial. Here I am, a little girl from Hackney who now has a portrait in the SCR of Imperial College. It's not something I would ever thought for myself. And I'm now talking to people about neurodivergent conditions. I'm talking to people about their experiences with disability, that I never thought that I would be in a position to do. I've went on my own health journey in this time period.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just being able to connect to people on that different level. And that's why EDI is important. That's why I love this role. That's why, yeah, I'm here.
There's something that you said at the start when you were looking at your careers, and you said that actually you liked although you're introverted, you liked working with people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually sharing, hearing their experiences has helped you develop as an individual and in your activity, and it's helped you gain your sense of belonging at Imperial.
Absolutely.
Am I right in saying that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to be able to be genuine with people, to be able to connect with people on an authentic level, you have to, and I'm taking this for Brienne Brown, you have to be able to connect with something within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been able to do that through my experiences, being able to draw on my experiences to create that sense of hopefully belonging for other people. So
Mm-hmm.
people know that there are people that maybe been going through something similar, that they can talk to, that they can vent with, and to, yeah, hopefully help give them perspective. I think
That's what
what I do.
yeah. I'm just seeing all the fan mail coming in. I don't think I've ever had anyone have so much fan mail. I might have to open it up for questions or comments
Yeah,
in a
please
second,
do.
right? So, but what I was going to say, I have been taught by Gabrielle, and I can concur with the comments that she is an excellent trainer. Very clear, calm, just an air of professionalism, but how can I put it? A really gentle touch at the same time. Okay, so I applaud you for the work which you're doing on Impact, because I think you're doing a fantastic job. I'm going to ask, it's going to go kind of tangentially, because you also mentioned about culture and stuff like that. And I know because you told me before, but the audience won't know. Aside from being, you keep telling me that you're introverted, but I can't believe it when I hear about some of the stuff you do. You're working in the pub, and then what's another one of your passions? Just so that I'm going to let everybody else decide. Is she introverted or is she not?
So, and to briefly touch on this, so one of my great passions is participating in carnival. And that's, when I say participating, that's wearing costumes, being behind the soundtrack, feathers and all. Yeah, it's something I really love, and it provides a sense of freedom. It's about, and I think I've described it before as being like a peacock spreading its feathers,
Yeah.
and just really being able to let loose and let the weight of the world, of all these things that life throws at you, all falls by the wayside when you're chipping down the road, when you're walking down the road, music blaring, feathers on, costumes, gems sparkling in the sunlight. Well, when it's sunny. It's the UK. It really just it's a surreal feeling. It's for me, it's a sense of freedom. It's something that you just can't compare, really. I know Carnival gets such a negative light and a negative press, but there's so much that goes into Carnival. You've got the mass camps, you've got people that are coming together to create these beautiful designs that somebody's created to specific themes. There's judging, there's a sense of competitiveness there. You have steel pans, you have who go onto international competitions. There is so much more to Carnival than just okay, crime, and it's whatever the media wants to portray it as. But again, sound system culture, which is unique to Notting Hill Carnival, because of the sound system culture that the UK has, that have again come from the Windrush generations and people coming over and bringing that sense of sales here. You don't find that anywhere. And of course, the food. We all love the food. can't forget the food. And I know that my team would be remiss on me if I don't mention food, because we're very much a foodie team. But yeah, and it's just all of that coming together. And again, it's about bringing people together and just being able to have a good time and to be free for 2 days of the year.
You see, it brings back as you described that, it brings back what you said about the cultural day that you had, the World Cultural Days, which you used to have in your primary school, in your school, that everybody comes to celebrate. And it's again that carnival feeling that everybody's coming to celebrate their culture, celebrate who they are. And I like the analogy of the peacock, that for the one day of the year, or however it is, you just expand and you just let everybody see, this is me, right? You don't see it often, but this is me in all of my regalia. I love that, and the freedom to flow. So I really do love that analogy. So again, you mentioned about how the family is very important, and you mentioned about how at Imperial, the work which you've done has also made you feel very welcomed. And again, with your with the carnival, you mentioned to me that it's like another family for you.
Yes.
Because of what they bring to you.
Absolutely.
Am I right in saying that?
Oh, absolutely. Carnival itself is a family. Again, you have your mass camps, but the Carnival community itself is a family. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody wants to help everybody. Everybody wants to be a part of it. The band that I started with went on to create lots of smaller, different bands, because that's where they grew, and it's all about those connections. So yeah.
That's wonderful. I'm going to open it up. Does anyone have any questions? I've got a few more that I want to ask, because there's another element of the journey which we want to just explore. But does anyone have any questions which they would like to ask? If you want to just raise your hands. Otherwise, I'm going to just ask, because as you were discussing, you also mentioned about being able to relate to people due to mental health, and also due to your own health journeys, as it were. Would you mind just elaborating on that for us, and explaining what it is that you're referring to?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2015, I started experiencing symptoms of flare-ups that started to have an impact in my life. So I used to get flare-ups in my eyes, which means I couldn't see because it's really painful. And I started on a diagnosis journey, started at Moorfields Eye Hospital, and then ended up in Guy's and St. Thomas under the rheumatology team. But the condition I have is quite difficult to diagnose, and it's a long journey to diagnosis, from lupus, and it does sit under the lupus family. It's technically called undifferentiated connective tissue disease, where you have elements of all different autoimmune conditions, or the symptoms of different autoimmune conditions, basically just knocking on the door saying, hello, we're here, we're going to cause a little bit of an issue, and we'll flare up for a moment, and then we'll settle down, and then we'll flare back up again. And it can be quite tiring, challenging, and very painful. And it's something that I've been managing for the past since 2015, so the past few years, and was managing quite well. So I would work 1 day a week from home just to be able to manage some of those symptoms. This is pre-pandemic. But then unfortunately, last year, because of that condition, because of the autoimmune condition that I've experienced, my symptoms became a lot worse, and I ended up with fluid on the lungs and a very severe blood clot in the left of my leg, which has meant that I now have reduced mobility because my nerves have been damaged, and it sends pain signals to the brain, although there's no technically pain taking place in the leg. And for me, that's been the most challenging part, because I found a way to manage my autoimmune condition quite successfully, and for it to become that much harder and have such an impact, which meant that I couldn't do things such as carnival. I can't be on the road because it's physically taxing. It's as I mean, carnival deals with many battles at the moment just to try and stay on the road. So we don't have enough resource or time to look at making sure that it's as inclusive as it can be for everybody who may have reduced mobility conditions to participate. Yes, they can spectate, but for me, spectating and participating is very different. So yes, it's a challenge, and it's a journey that I'm still on, and I'm not quite there yet, but it's something I'm coming to grips with, really.
I'm just trying to get my head around, because it's kind of like you have this passion for carnival, and then it's almost like it's then taken away due to the health condition. And I clearly understand, or I think I understand about that whole idea of your mobility being for carnival, how many miles is it? It's about 5 miles that you walk.
So it's 3.5. So it's 3.5 miles. But that's depending on how many bands, how many crowds, etc. Because then it can become even longer. It can feel even longer than that.
So it's an all-day thing that you're on your feet. So it would be
from 7
almost
a.m.
impossible for you to be able to do that. But I do understand where you then say about, when you look at something like carnival, about the accessibility for people who have some kind of physical disability. It's not accessible for you to actually be a full participant in the way that you wanted to be in the past.
So some people do participate. So if you have a mobility scooter, that's motorized, then it's a bit easier, and they decorate those, and you participate in that way. But beyond that, it's not really feasible to participate in that in a full way.
So putting on your kind of like EDI hat, right, and looking at the inclusion element, what would you like to see, and from your own personal perspective, what would you like to see happen so that you could potentially be able to participate again within, say, Notting Hill Carnival, or whichever carnival that you might go and attend?
Oh, that's a good one, because it's such a complex thing, because you have your main street parade, where you'll see your floats, the costumes that are coming down that will go past judging point that the crowds can see. But then you've got the crowd participation, you've got the security concerns. So for me, I suppose it's about, one, having rest points. It's about having maybe specified trucks that people can go on who do have a disability, that they can then participate on that truck, so they're not having to do the walk. But I know that there are some security concerns around that, so I'm not quite sure how that would work out to be on open top buses, but it can be done, and I think there's ways around it, so to see more of that, but there's a lot of logistical.
Fantastic. Gabrielle, I could sit here and talk to you about sound systems and carnival all day long, and the work which you're doing in EDI is just fantastic. I'm gonna ask my final 2 questions, right? And my final 2 questions are it's a kind of like 2-parters. One is, what advice would you give to your 16-year-old self or your younger self, right? And then the second question is, what would you say your younger self would look at you now and say, wow, are you that Gabrielle? So what is what do you think? You can either answer one or both of them, whichever one.
Um, the advice I would give to my younger 16-year-old self is to put yourself out there. Don't close yourself off to the world. In times it can get hard and it can get tough, but don't isolate yourself, because I was very good at doing that. I was very good at cutting myself off, and it took my family to draw that out of me, to draw me back in to participate in the world. Don't close yourself off, and know that there is always hope. It's life changes, life moves. So sorry, we've got cut off again. I'm
We
not
got
sure
cut
what's.
off just as you were saying, don't lose hope.
And just know that there's a reason for everything, and we're all on a journey. So all my life experiences have led me to being at Imperial and to make changes to some people's lives at Imperial. Um, I've received thank you cards. And know that some of the work I've done has made a change to some people's lives, and that's important to me. And that's why I feel like I belong at Imperial, because I've been able to help make that change. I've been some small part of it. So just know that there is a reason that you've had these experiences, because those experiences will go on to help somebody else. So I think that's the advice I would give.
Fantastic. And what do you think your younger self would say? Wow, are you that Gabrielle?
We've come a long way. We're still on a journey, but we've come a long way. So
Yeah.
well done, and keep achieving. That's what she'll tell me.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Gabrielle, it's been really great having you as our guest today on Belonging. Right.
Thank
I
you
know
so
that
much,
there's
Ron.
many other things that we can discuss. Now, I did pose a question at the start, well, midway through, and I said, she says she's introverted. What's your and I've seen someone's put, well, maybe she's ambivariant. She's kind of like in between. It depends on the situation which she finds herself in. I think that's a lot of us can relate to that, you know. But I think it is testament to your sense of belonging that you feel that you can express yourself, because I know that if you didn't feel you belonged, then you would definitely keep yourself to yourself. So I think from that perspective, I think it's a good thing. All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
No, thank
Absolutely
you so much
brilliant.
for having me, and I'm
It's
glad I've
been
done this.
absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. I'm going to just share with everyone what's coming up next week and also advertise something for everyone. So next week, we're going to have Sharon Inkatara, and she is the author of The Incredible Power of Staff Networks. And she is in terms of the work that she does in developing people, she is amazing. So please tune in to that next week. And in addition to that, I just want to advertise that a lot of people have said, oh, can we have something in person? So Imperial as One have come together and we are doing this Meet the Author. It's where we have an opportunity to come together to discuss and talk about different literature which are within the Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, so that we can share our experiences. And our first of these is going to be with Simon Hudson, and he wrote a two-part book called History Through the Black Experience, and that's going to be on the 29th of June. So please go to Eventbrite. I've got to put the link on here, but go to Eventbrite and you will see where you can sign up for it. And if you have missed any of the other experiences or other interviews, then please go to our YouTube channel, which is tinyurl.com /belonging-IAO. And you'll be able to see this and other videos which or other interviews that we've done. And so finally, I'm going to just say, as I always say, it's because people are willing to share their stories. It's because people are willing to be exposed, right, that we're able to gain a better sense of identity and sense of belonging, and to recognize that there's more that unites us than divides us. So until we meet again, hopefully next week, have a good weekend and keep belonging. Take care.